Welcome to Chatting Shit with Ostique, the podcast series where we chat about shit with inspirational people from all walks of life. Today, we are joined by the wonderful and inspiring Alex Mitchell. We hope you enjoy this conversation.
So Alex, welcome to Chatting Shit with Ostique. Thank you for being here. Today we are going to delve into diet and nutrition with a stoma. We see tons of questions about this all the time, both to us in terms of our social media, but also between ostomates on their own social media. So I know this is going to be super helpful. Before we get started, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and I guess how you became interested in diet and nutrition with a stoma?
Sure. So I'm a dietitian by background. I qualified back in 2011. I was working clinically for sort of 5 to 6 years, and during that time, some of my roles were in sort of gastro and surgery areas, and I saw patients who were undergoing stoma surgery or had a stoma, and obviously as a dietitian, my role is to give advice and support on dietary management for those people with a stoma. And then recently I've moved into doing research, so in 2017 I started a PhD, and that was on the topic of diet and stomas. And specifically, I focused my research on dietary advice and management for people with an ileostomy. So that's sort of my specific area of knowledge research-wise, was very much focusing on ileostomies and dietary management. And I've spent, best part of 5 years doing research into that area, looking at kind of a lot about what we know in terms of what evidence there is for the advice that's given, and also finding out from people who've got an ileostomy and from healthcare professionals who provide advice to people with an ileostomy on diet about their experiences and their knowledge and understanding as well, hopefully, so that we can learn more in the future about dietary management and get more evidence to support the advice that we're giving.
Oh, wow, that sounds amazing. This is probably a very broad question. I don't know how easy it's going to be to answer, but from all of the research that you have done, what would you say your top tips would be to someone for trying to manage their diet and nutrition with a stoma? Are there like a couple of golden rules, for example?
That's a difficult one. I mean, people with stomas, they've got different types of stomas, they've got different conditions that have led them to have a stoma. So I think the key thing probably to be aware of is that everyone's different and everyone's got a different background. And there's some dietary advice that's obviously quite general and applies to lots of people, but very much often it needs to be very individualized. And just because something is the right approach for one person with a stoma doesn't necessarily mean that it's entirely the right approach for somebody else. So that's really kind of important to be aware of, especially when there's lots of information on diet from so many different sources, lots of things online, different healthcare professionals saying different things. It's important to be aware that the advice is not always applicable to everybody. So it's important to work out what works for you, and to understand that there is always going to be an element of trial and error in dietary management with a stoma, and working out what sort of how your body reacts to certain foods and what works for you. I think that's what's really important.
Something, we kind of put this out there to the community and asked, what would you love to know from a kind of dietary and nutrition perspective? And quite a few people came back and said, how do you manage a healthy and balanced diet when there are certain foods that you simply cannot eat? For example, if you are told to avoid high fibre foods for either a period of time or for a duration, how do you get that kind of the nutritional value that you would normally get from those kinds of foods?
Yeah, that's a really important issue for people with a stoma, because they are commonly told to, especially when straight after stoma surgery, told to avoid high fibre foods, and the sort of the diet that it's suggested they follow can seem quite contradictory to what your general healthy balanced diet looks like. But it is still possible to eat healthily with a stoma, and it is really important. So I guess there's a few things. Firstly is maybe in the first few weeks after surgery, that's quite a sort of unique period, and you might need to be stricter with your diet in the first few weeks, and that it may be that your diet's a bit restricted during those first few weeks while your bowel's healing after surgery. But you can start to reintroduce fibre foods gradually. Even after a couple of weeks, you can start to reintroduce them slowly, just a little bit at a time, chew things well, and see what you can tolerate. And certainly after the first we say 6 to 10 weeks, the bowel should have really done a lot of healing by then, and it should be possible to reintroduce a lot of the foods that might have been restricted early on. But also there's different, it's not a case of you have to not avoid all fruit and vegetables. Certain fruits and vegetables are higher in fibre than others, and also how you cook the food. So if you cook things well, if you chop off the stalks and remove stringy bits of things, really cook them till they're quite soft, chew things well, then that reduces the what we call the insoluble fibre content, which is the sort of fibre that you can see in the fruits and vegetables, and also whole grains when you get the shells of things. Those are the things that can, there's a risk if you have a lot of them and you're prone to them, that can potentially cause blockages with a stoma. So that's why one of the reasons why people with a stoma might need to be careful with those things. But some of those you can, in the cooking process, and preparation, you can remove some of the insoluble fibre and reduce it down. So you can still have fruits and vegetables, but maybe prepare them a little bit differently, and really make sure that you're chewing them well when you eat them, because the chewing process breaks down that fibre to start with. So that makes a big difference as well.
And you mentioned some fruits and vegetables are lower in these insoluble fibres than others. What would be some examples of those?
So root vegetables, if you peel them, then they're going to have less of the insoluble fibre in them, so they can be good ones to start with and to go for initially. Just make sure they're peeled, rather than the green leafy vegetables. Those are really fibrous, and might be best if you're starting to gradually reintroduce higher fibre foods to leave those till later on, or have them in smaller quantities.
Okay, that's great. And in terms of fluid management, we hear this a lot. I know dehydration can be a big problem for people, and not necessarily knowing what to do when they're feeling dehydrated or they're having high output and perhaps having more water, which might not actually be the answer. So from a kind of fluid management perspective, A, how important is this for ostomates to be aware of? And B, what are the best ways to manage fluid intake?
Yeah, so fluid management is really important, particularly for people with an ileostomy. They can be more prone to getting dehydrated. And so it's important to have regular fluids. It depends if the main issue is if somebody has a high or very loose sort of liquid output, then that shows that they're not absorbing the fluid. and they're losing a lot of fluid, so they're going to be becoming dehydrated. And the natural thing, like you say, to do then is to drink more water, because you're losing the fluid and you need more water. But if you drink lots of plain water, then actually that doesn't get absorbed very well in your bowel, and you need salts and some glucose, a bit of sugar, carbohydrate, to help absorb that fluid. So if you've got a high output and you're becoming dehydrated, then it's important to have what we call isotonic fluids, which have got this glucose and salts in as well. So there's a couple of solutions that are recommended. St Mark's Hospital have what's called St Mark's solution. They sort of invented the recipe, and you can easily find that online, or maybe we can share it as well, the recipe for that, where you mix a certain amount of glucose and bicarbonate of soda and salt and water together, and drink that, just sort of sip it regularly throughout the day. Otherwise, some people use double strength diaurolite, can work quite well as well, that you can get from the chemist.
Okay, that's fantastic. And this might be a very difficult question, because we've already discussed that this is quite an individual thing, but we've had a few questions in terms of, are there foods that you should just absolutely avoid when you have a stoma? Are there things that you should not go near no matter what? One of the examples that we were given, we actually had a few questions we had a few of the exact same question, which is, how much risk is there in eating popcorn, and is this an absolute no-go?
There's a few foods that tend to be higher risk and more people have a problem with. But I mean, there's been quite a few studies done where people with a stoma have been asked sort of what foods cause your problem that you do have to avoid. And there is no single food that everybody with a stoma has to avoid and absolutely everybody has a problem with. So popcorn is one of the higher risk foods, and something that can cause problems for quite a lot of people with a stoma. So it's good to be careful, but that doesn't mean that if you've got a stoma, there's no way that you can sort of safely have popcorn. You can, if you want to have it, then definitely try it in just very small quantities to begin with, chewing it really, really carefully, and yeah, see how your body reacts. And that's the same for any sort of the higher risk foods. So some people say that broccoli can be a problem, but I think that's if you're having a lot of big stalks on it and things like that. It very much depends on sort of how you're preparing it, how you're eating it, and also on your own body and how that reacts. And a lot of these foods that are sort of people are really worried about, the reason is that about the risk of blockage to the stoma, and that is more of a risk for people with an ileostomy than a colostomy a lot of the time, though it does depend what other bowel surgery you've had. But generally people with an ileostomy need to be more careful than people with a colostomy. But yeah, the important thing is to just try things in small amounts and be careful and see what your body can tolerate.
Fab. We also had some questions in on both sides of kind of the managing weight perspective. So some people finding it a real struggle to gain weight or even to maintain weight. And then on the other end of the spectrum, some people are finding it really challenging to lose and maintain weight because obviously they can't eat so many of the traditionally kind of healthy foods. They can't fill their plate with salad, for example. So kind of tackling those one by one, what would some advice be for someone, I guess, to start with trying to gain weight?
Okay, so yeah, certainly people can have issues with managing their weight after having a stoma, and there can be different. It's a bit difficult because there's many different reasons why people might be struggling with their weight in one way or another, and there may be still sort of underlying conditions that are contributing to malabsorption and things. For example, if someone's got Crohn's disease, it's possible they still have some active Crohn's disease and things which obviously need to be managed by their healthcare team. But in terms of if you're struggling to maintain weight, that you've lost a lot of weight and you want to gain weight, then it's important to try to sort of eat little and often. Can really help in the first instance, and to try and have more nutrients dense foods and meals, and so, like you say, it's quite likely you're not trying to bulk up your meals with lots of fruit and veg if you've recently had stoma surgery anyway, but making sure that you have a good source of protein with each meal, so some meat or chicken or plant-based sources, so pulses, those sorts of things, making sure you're having protein with each meal, high protein drinks, sort of milky drinks and puddings can be useful if you tolerate those okay, and yogurts, things that and if you're trying to gain some weight, then obviously go for the full fat versions. Don't worry about thinking, oh, that's not healthy. If you're losing weight, you need the calories. And then from the other side of things, for people who sometimes people do find that they put on weight a lot easier after they've had a stoma. It might be that they were struggling to absorb nutrients because of their condition before they had a stoma, and then after the stoma surgery, they're able to absorb nutrients a lot better, so they gain more weight. So, like I said, although initially you might need to be sort of restricting the higher fibre foods, you can start to reintroduce them quite quickly, and do try to include fruits and vegetables, and maybe go for the lower insoluble fibre ones. So like I said before, like the root vegetables, and include vegetables in your meals, but maybe cook, rather than having salad, maybe have like steamed vegetables or boiled vegetables and soften them to reduce the fibre content. So make sure that you can still have those more filling, less nutrient dense foods with your meals, so often people are told with a stoma to have sort of white starchy carbohydrates to thicken the output. There's not much research on this, and I think the main thing is that by having white starchy carbohydrates, you're not having the whole grain ones, so you're reducing the fibre content. So if you've got a problem with high output, then it's beneficial because you do need to reduce your fibre content. But if you've got an established stoma and your output is a good consistency and you can tolerate some fibre, then that doesn't mean you have to stick to white versions of starchy carbohydrates for the rest of your life because you've got a stoma.
That's really good to know. I think sometimes people maybe think that the advice given to them immediately after surgery is the advice they have to follow for life, but actually knowing that you can introduce things along the way, that's great to know. Another thing that people experience, sometimes I assume it's from a particular trigger, and sometimes this is something that people suffer with quite a lot, but kind of gas build up in the bag. Are there specific things that you can do to kind of reduce the likelihood of that happening?
So, yeah, the gas build-up in the bag can be quite problematic for some people, and obviously it can sort of have implications for your sort of confidence, sort of going out and sort of socializing and things. It's useful to think about that sort of when it's thought of as a problem. If it's a problem for you, obviously you need to do something about it, but you don't need to be necessarily overly worried and avoiding things to prevent it happening, because as individuals without stomas, different people are more prone to having more gas and bloating, and it can be more of a problem for some people than others. So it is quite an individual thing. And the foods that would cause more gas and bloating in someone without a stoma, it's the same foods if you've got a stoma that might be problematic. So things like onions and garlic and sort of beans and things like that. So if it is a problem for you, then it's useful to identify where you might be having foods that are more likely to be producing more gas, and then you can decide whether it's really a problem for you and it's really uncomfortable at the time, so you want to cut a few things out, or maybe you just want to think about the timing of when you eat certain foods. Like if you're going to be if it's something you like to eat, then maybe if you're at home all day and you can manage the extra gas in the bag, then you can eat them on those days. But on other days, if you know you're going to be out and about a lot, then you might decide to avoid those foods on those days.
That makes a lot of sense. We touched upon insoluble fibres and the fact that can lead to blockages. I've seen quite a lot about this kind of on people's stories on social media where they've kind of said, I've got a blockage, this is how I'm dealing with it from a kind of dietary perspective to try and move things along, or I can feel one coming, I'm doing this, that and the other. And it seems to be quite wildly different what everyone thinks is the kind of solution to a blockage. So if somebody feels like they are starting to get a blockage, are there specific things that they can eat or drink to try and move that along?
So I think generally it's advised, if you feel like you're starting to get a blockage, to stop eating at that point and drink fluids and sort of do things like trying to things to sort of relax your abdominal muscles. So like using a hot water bottle and things like that, and focusing on drinking fluids. If it gets to the point where you can't keep fluids down, then that obviously that's a serious problem at that point, and you need to seek medical attention. So that's the sort of general advice, really. It may be that people find individually that there's certain foods that it helps to eat a little bit of, but I think, as you say, if people are saying it's quite different things, so there's not sort of any general advice on specific.
Okay, that's great to know. If someone has stoma surgery coming up, are there particular things from a kind of dietary and nutrition perspective that you would advise that they do in perhaps the kind of days or weeks leading up to the surgery?
That's a good question. It's certainly stoma surgeries. You're having a major surgery to your bowel, so you want to be sort of in as good condition as is possible prior to that surgery to help with the healing and recovery afterwards. Obviously, it depends what the reason why you're needing the stoma surgery. There's different conditions that you might have had which would be leading to that, and some are more likely to have made you malnourished prior to the surgery than others. But certainly it helps to try and optimize nutrition as much as possible prior to that surgery, in terms of having plenty of protein. Sometimes people may be recommended to have high protein nutritional supplements in the build up to having surgery, to try and optimize their nutrition. So yeah, certainly having regular meals with protein is important. Trying to have as balanced a diet as possible, and if you have a particular problem with absorbing nutrients and with being malnourished, then hopefully your healthcare team should be helping to advise you on that and maybe prescribing supplements.
Perfect. Alex, thank you so much. This has been so helpful. We've answered all of the questions from the community, so I think people are going to be really happy to have these. Are there any other last nuggets of information that you would want to pass along from a nutrition perspective?
I don't think there's any particular nuggets as such. I think it's like what I said at the beginning. It is a very individual thing, and there is going to be some trial and error involved. Sometimes some people can find it helpful to sort of keep a bit of a diary, like a food and symptom diary,
great idea.
Monitoring what they're eating and what their symptoms are, and then they can maybe see for themselves if there's certain associations with certain foods. So some people may find that helpful. But yeah, it's definitely understanding your own body, and also bearing in mind, like if there's certain foods you really enjoy, then thinking about how you can incorporate them into your diet. We don't want people to be overly restricted with their diet. We want to be able people to have as balanced a diet as possible and to be able to include as many of the foods they enjoy as possible. So yeah, hopefully for most people there should be a way to include a lot of those foods.
Fantastic. Alex, thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we can have you back on the podcast. We'll get some more questions in, I'm sure, over the next few months, so can address those again the next time.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Have you seen the new Ostique skins yet? Ostique skins are revolutionary ostomy pouch covers that were created to make the wearer feel confident, sexy and powerful in all of life's moments. From moments of intimacy to lounging by the pool, conquering a workout or simply heading out to lunch, skins have you covered. Even better, they're compatible with all major colostomy and ileostomy bags. Ostique skins are available in a range of colours and skin tones, and they're made from a revolutionary material that's completely waterproof, high quality, soft and comfortable. Skins are easy to use, even with reduced dexterity, and they work with both closed and drainable bags. Plus, skins are also environmentally friendly and vegan. There are 4 bundles available to buy now, and you can also purchase individual skins. Head to ostique.co.uk to find out more.